Welcome to the First Media Consulting Podcast, The Business Chronicles, where we dive deep into the stories of successful business owners. Here's your host, Didi and Nicholas. Thanks for joining today. Let's talk.
Welcome back, everybody, to our podcast. I am so excited to introduce to you Dr. Paull. He owns a company called Easy Orthopedics, and he's going to bring a lot of valuable information to this podcast to our listeners. And we're just going to kick it off by kind of getting to know a little bit about his background. How you doing, Dr. Paull?
Hey, Didi. Thanks for having me on. I'm doing well.
You're very, very welcome. So give us a little bit of a background of who you are.
Sure. So my name is Dr. Daniel Paull, orthopedic surgeon by training. And I have my own practice, a solo practice in Colorado Springs. And the interesting thing is I don't contract with any insurance companies. I don't work with any hospital systems, and I have a really difficult time having people tell me what to do. And I've sort of made it work in that sort of space, which is a new way of doing it. Same knowledge, but different way of doing it.
So I like how you kind of said that it's a new space, right? It's something that's new that's coming to market. You saw an opportunity and you're actually moving forward on that opportunity to help grow your business, correct?
Yeah, I mean, the opportunities right now, that exist are essentially you can work for a very large hospital system, or you can work for a large practice, which in a lot of cases, private equity's crept in. So, pick your poison. At the end of the day, people are going to be using you as a commodity to make money off of you. And while that doesn't sound so terrible, it actually is when they just, the more you work, the more they make. So they don't care about your family or your life in general. So they'll push you as hard as they can. And I think that creates a lot of unhappy, burned out docs. I didn't want to do that. So that's why I sort of separated myself from those systems. And it's really been a blessing over the past 5 years, which is as long as I've been doing it.
Well, congratulations for that, kind of seeing an opportunity and understanding why you're doing this. A lot of business owners that get into wanting to become a business owner don't understand the why and how they can push forward. So going to talking a little bit about your services in your business. I know you offer treatment for back pain, ankle pain, knee pain, as well as, stitches for a cut, doing house calls. So you're kind of like, you're offering a lot of different services by being able to make house calls, which is good as well.
Yeah, when I started, I was 100% house calls. It cuts the overhead way down. And in the beginning, I didn't really have a lot of money to sort of figure this thing out. So, and I still do them sometimes, but I'm still mobile. I go to I see patients at other people's offices a lot of the time. But yeah, I'll take care of back pain, shoulder pain, any sort of thing like that. Not necessarily operating on all of it. Really try to help people avoid surgery if I can. But that's mostly what I do these days. And it's been good. And I think people generally get better. And it's been a nice practice so far. Obviously there's some things I have to figure out, but it's been growing quite nicely.
And I know you mentioned a couple things about what inspired you to start your business, not working for corporate America. Is there anything else that comes to mind? Maybe one or two other things that come to mind?
Well, look, when you start your own business, sometimes it's well thought out and you get a business plan and like you sit down and you calculate, and then sometimes it's just a bunch of calamity and like craziness that, that life is, and that has you. And so I would probably fall into that boat more than kind of sort of the planning boat. Which seems kind of odd, but in my instance, like I finished my residency in orthopedic surgery and I started a fellowship in hand surgery. So I was just going to be a hand surgeon. And it was not a positive educational experience, to say the least. And then when I was looking for jobs, all I found was these old bitter senior partners telling me how much money they made in the early 90s. And the jobs, I would describe them as abusive at best, meaning they, they're basically looking for someone just to do all their grunt work. And after a long time of already doing that, it's like, well, how long am I going to do that? So that kind of created an existential crisis of sorts. And so I quit my fellowship. I broke my lease. I moved out to Colorado into my in-laws' basement. And then I started my practice, really not knowing how to really do it, and sort of figuring it out as I go and sort of failing forward. And obviously I'm in my own basement now, so times have changed. But it was a challenge. there was a lot to figure out. But it works. And that's kind of the wonderful thing.
I like that, man, a lot. So what's a belief or a strategy you held strongly in the past that you've completely changed your mind about? Anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, so a belief that I probably had was like, naively before I started my business that like, profit sharing in a sense where it's like, all right, well, I'll work for them. Like they'll make some money, like I'll make some money, like we'll both be okay. And the reality of the situation is, I'm sure many of your listeners know this, is that they make as much money as they possibly can and pay you as little as they can get away with. And that sort of pushed docs into these like small holes. So really one of my principles now that I use is I don't let anybody bill on my behalf. No one, I'll pay for things, right? Like I pay for services and I pay for things that I need.
Right.
But no one gets to take the work that I've done, seeing people, and submit that and then collect and then pay me. Nobody gets to do that for me. And that's proved to be a pretty good strategy because whether you're in an insurance-based world or a cash-based world, you're always going to find people who are trying to do that. And it's almost never in your best interest. So that's a belief that I try not to violate, or I don't violate. And that's helped me stay afloat and do well.
So I like how you said that you're basically in control versus having someone else be in control, correct?
Yeah. And I think some doctors fall prey to people, business people, especially, who are like, well, you just be the doctor. You do that stuff. You focus on the stuff you like, and I'll do all the business stuff. Like, don't worry about it, which I think is a huge trap because you fall into situations like the ones I mentioned. So I try very hard to fight that. If someone says, I like to do all the business stuff and let the doctor be the doctor, it makes my stomach like churn. It really, really bothers me. It's probably one of the worst things you can say to me in a business context. And it still happens and it makes me want to vomit. Yeah, that's my feelings on that.
So going to some unexpected lessons that you've learned from running your business, do you have a couple of those that you've come in contact with?
Yeah, I think for the small business world, relationships are very important. I mean, you got to be careful who you work with. And what I've found is that birds of a feather tend to flock together. So if you find good people who you trust, they're going to also recommend to you good people that you can trust. And those are the people you want to work with. Now, on the other side of the coin, if you find people who don't share the same moral compass or values or you, they're also going to recommend people to you to work with who also are in this exact same boat. And so what I found is that people tend to share similar value systems. It's if all you care about is money, or, then you're going to end up working, if someone, all they care about is money, they're going to refer you or bring you into a world with people that have that same value. But if you value other things, then, you got to sort of find like your flock in a certain sense of, and be careful if someone doesn't share your values. I would be very hesitant to work with them.
Well, I like how you said, you used the word trust. And trust is so hard to get, right? In business or anywhere. And if you can find a good team that value the word trust and build that relationship with them, then, I truly believe the sky is the limit. That's just my thoughts. So what are some of the trends that you see happening in your business, what you're doing? Anything that's kind of standing out right now?
Well, in the world I'm in would be direct care, meaning people who are not going through their insurances. And, you're starting to see that world grow a little bit more on the physician side as like direct primary care doctors who don't really want to deal with the system anymore and want to practice good medicine. And the systems are not allowing them to do that. So you're starting to see that happen a little bit more, and people starting to realize that as their insurance gets worse, like maybe it doesn't make sense for me to use my insurance, and that I'm actually sometimes the most economical options for a lot of people. So I think you're starting to see some small shift. Healthcare moves very slowly. So, these changes are they're almost, what's the word for it? Geologic, timeline here, but it's happening. So that's pretty cool.
And I'm assuming too, in your industry, Dr. Paull, that technology plays a huge role, right? It's always changing and evolving, correct?
Yes and no. I mean, at its core, what I'm doing is I'm seeing patients, and so that takes time, and that takes listening and focusing. So those are not really that technology dependent. In fact, in a lot of instances, the technology has the opposite effect. We're distracting you from the job at hand. But that being said, yeah, I mean, I do my notes online. We have an automatic text messaging system. I mean, so we try to be paperless. my consent form is signed. I use a little ultrasound to carry around in my bag, and that plugs into an iPad. So yeah, certainly, I mean, there's a certain balance to it, but I think some of these technocratic solutions to healthcare are ill-conceived because they miss the basic point of
that's
a visit.
Point. That's a very good point. As we wrap up here, can you give any advice to some aspiring entrepreneurs or business owners that want to become a business owner? Give our listeners some advice on that.
Yeah, sure. What I would say is that be careful who you listen to. You're going to find a lot of people telling you it'll never work, and these are people who have never run a business themselves. So be careful who you get your advice from. When I started, I went to SCORE, which is a place that used to stand for Senior Corps of Retired Executives. And they give advice. And I met with some older gentleman, and he worked at HR at a Fortune 50 company. And he was really nice, and he wrote notes down. And then he sent me an email 2 weeks later, like, yeah, I think your business is never going to work. So there's that. And I was really bothered by it. It really bothered me that this guy basically, saying, well, you just have it's a terrible idea. It'll never work. And then he was wrong. And it turns out he didn't know what he was talking about. You know why? Because he's not in that space. And that's something I know now, which I didn't know then. So not all advice is worthwhile. Ignore the advice. Only listen to the advice from people who are doing what you want to do. That's worthwhile. If they're not doing exactly what you want to do, or don't have a history starting businesses, I essentially ignore it. That's my advice.
Dr. Paull, I'm so excited for you to be able to share your successes and some of the challenges that you've been throughout the many years with our listeners. Before we wrap up, could you give our listeners your phone number and a way to get a hold of you, maybe your website as well?
Yeah, if you want to get a hold of me, website's easyorthopedics.com. I have a YouTube channel, it's youtube.com/@orthopedics. And if you find me on LinkedIn at Daniel Paull MD, that's the easiest way to find me.
Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us and kind of share your experiences with our listeners. And hopefully we can have you back on the platform here in the near future.
All right, sounds good. Thanks for having me on.
You're very welcome.
Thank you for tuning in to First Media Consulting Podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, subscribe today. To nominate a business you would like to recommend to be on our show, go to firstmediaconsulting.com or call. Thank you for listening.